Hi, it's Paolo. It's been a while since I made one of these videos, and I was just drinking some antique tea, and I got a few things out, a few of my old cakes and old books to talk to you a little bit about, yeah, these antique teas and where we're going from now. So the one I have here, it's from the 30s to the 40s. It was a gift by Mr. Chen Huaiyan, the founder of ZhenChunYaHao. He was recently in the UK and we had an event where we drank this and he gifted me some. It's not much to look at because this is the dust that was at the bottom, like at the bottom of the tongue. So it's just be put in a tea bag. So this is like maybe, most expensive tea bag in the world. Not much to look at. However, it's proper antique tea. And although I'm quite experienced with this kind of tea, there are many. There are really, I don't know, it's maybe like at least 50 different types. And I probably drank, I don't know, 10, 15 at different times. I don't own any of them. They're way too expensive for that. But they all have quite similar characteristic, which now that I drink a cup, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. In general, the history is from the late 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s up until the 1950s. There's a lot of small producers, mostly based in Yiwu, and they make puerh cakes. And this, one way or another, get post-fermented a little bit. If nothing else, when they get transferred, on horseback, the famous tea horse road, they get a little bit cooked. So everything I tried, including very good antique tea. So for example, I just had this one of these two ZhenChunYaHao. So this is one of the ZhenChunYaHao, Songping, Fujianchang are like maybe the three most known. And it was very, very good. I got some extensive note on an Instagram post. But the point being, it was a little bit show-like, but nothing like the show today. More like 10-20% fermentation. And that's the case for most antique teas, actually. They always have, nobody really knows at this point, but one way or another, either at some point, perhaps they've been kept in Hong Kong, or most often, in transportation, or perhaps they even try to do post-fermentation on purpose. We do not know this. Let me just prove this. Wow, look at that. I only had one steep before. This one looks intense. So this has been stored in Taiwan for a long time at a friend of Mr. Chen. And yeah, this is the kind of tea that you don't really buy, you only get gifted. Wow, that's intense. I'll show you a little bit closer to the camera. Okay, hopefully you can see the color. So you can tell this is not show, as in this is not modern show. It's not 50% or more fermented show. It's got still quite a lot of bitterness despite how dark it is. Pretty sure you can see the color. Maybe I'll next tip maybe I'll show you better. So it's got quite a lot of, even how dark it is, it's got quite a lot of freshness. The aftertaste is quite large on both sides of the mouth. Now actually, many Hao Ji Cha are not that great. I tried quite a bit, and there's a reason that like the Dongqing and Songping and Fujianchang are the most known. Probably, most likely, almost for sure, the reason is those had either a better grade, as in, for example, they only pick 1 or 2 leaves, but more importantly, they contain much more old tree as opposed to a smaller tree planted around. What's good? It splashes really high in the palate. The aftertaste is really strong. The cheese is also really strong. With like one sip, I could feel it. And why you can tell this is not show? How would I explain this? Let's see. To start with, it's got this ring. Oops. It's got this ring around it, which, okay, I'm gonna try and show you again. Maybe you can see better on this cup. But the point being, the very old tea it's not just dark throughout, but as a lighter ring around the rim of the cup. Taste-wise, yeah, there is the good amount of bitterness, not even bitterness, gone, really. This taste between sweet and bitter. The aftertaste is really, really spread out, kind of everywhere in the mouth. It's really conquering the mouth in a way that Puerh cannot quite do, because in the moment when you do fermentation, like Puerh fermentation, in all at once, something gets lost. And particularly in terms of aftertaste, usually you do notice that the aftertaste is not quite as deep. And this one is really quite deep, also down in the throat. Wow, this is really good. When we had it together, it was like 20 people together, and it was not as concentrated. But this is great. Whoa. So this is one of the good Hao Ji Cha. I tried some that were not as good, actually, as I was saying before. Tong Sing is definitely one of the good ones. I cannot remember what the non-good ones were, because there were quite a lot, and every once in a while somebody has one of these more obscure one. I don't know, Cheshun, I don't know, I read a couple of random ones in Benji, Tongyuan, never really, Tongyuan, maybe I heard of this one, but never really had it. Jichang, this is meant to be okay. Yeah, so the difference anyway, being between some of the one that use a lot of old tree were much better and still are. And so even though they're technically both antique tea, the material really, really matters a lot. And this really is the point of the video today. So after the 1950s, we get the Cultural Revolution. Well, we don't get the Cultural Revolution yet, but we do get the communism in China. And at that point, all the factories are nationalized. Well, some are small producers are closed, and there are national factories. Most important of which is Menghai. Then you're gonna get Kunming, Shaoguan. There is one very, very important tea, the 1950s Hongyan, or Red Mark. So this is what this is. Whoa. Looks like that. You probably heard of this before. Now, this is arguably one of the most important pu'er in history. Or at least it has a serious contender to be one of the very best. The price of some of this with terrible storage, it's already over 100,000 pounds. But that's with terrible storage, so that's the stuff you're gonna buy on a Hong Kong auction. I did try, however, a dry storage version of the 1950s, and I think it still is the best pu'er I've had to date. The best pu'er I've had to date, for sure. Better than the 1920s, 30s Tongqing, because it's two reasons. One is completely Shang. So at least the version I tried was never in a wet storage in Hong Kong, and also didn't have any post-fermentation. And it's just really, really good. So everything I said about this, like about the aftertaste splashing everywhere, is like that, but 10 times as much. When I drank it, it's as if I had like bitter sweet spots, very, very strong all over the mouth, in a way that no other tea I've ever had has. And I also tried teas that were over 100 years old, whether Pu'er, Loose Leaf, and Liu Bao, and the Hongyan still was better than that. The level of aftertaste, the level of qi, just the level of energy, how it flushed my body and how different I felt after. Unfortunately, this is not a tea I own. Actually, I do have a small 6-gram chunk that was gifted to me by the same person I had this session with, which I am extremely grateful. Just that chunk probably is worth many £1,000s. But yeah, otherwise it's not a tea I have, obviously. And after this, I've tried other teas of around the same age, and nothing is really quite close to the Hongyan. So there is Lanyin, or looks like this, Lanyin or Blue Mark. For example, one of these two. And I had this on the same day of the Hongyan, and also together with some 50s Liu Bao, and the Lanyin was really like nothing in comparison. How much it lasts, very, very poor. I am glad I never bought anything like this. Extremely high price, quality drinking, not really as good. But this is not specific about Lan Yen. It's everything from the 50s up until the 90s is essentially terrace plantation material. So it's quite weak, except Hong Yin. So Hong Yin was the last one that was still done, picking up using some old tree material. And you can really, really tell, like the difference in it is massive. So after the 50s Hong Yin, in the 60s and 70s, as I was saying, the quality, particularly of the state production, its state factory production is really much lower, particularly from the main factory. Something that I do have, it's so this is Hong Yin, which had been in Hong Kong before, looking at the color. And it's been stored in the US quite dry for a while. This is also a gift. And this is from either 60s or 70s. And it's not quite as good. Again, the level of depth of aftertaste, depth of aftertaste both ways, nostrils and down, is not quite as good. And then we get into teas like Huang Yin or Yellow Mark from the 1970s. This is another really, really expensive cake. Not sure what the prices are right now. Maybe 50K, 35K, something like that. And yeah, nice. Very strong, nice Menghai taste. Quite bitter, but it doesn't last very long at all. Again, plantation material will do that. But there are two cakes that I do have here that I'm going to show you. One is a Guangyun Gong, or the tea that was made in Guangdong. However, some of these cakes were made in Yunnan, so Guangyun Gong. This is pretty good, actually. It's a little bit better than just plantation material. It's a blend of different. It's probably plantation and some old and big tree. And because it's a quite small production, it's not that expensive. I think it's about 5K, that kind of level. This is what I have left. And then I got something else, which this one should be either from probably around the 70s. This was a gift. It has been in Hong Kong and it's been stored for 20 years dried in Malaysia, and still you can see the storage flavor problems. So that should tell you a lot about Hong Kong storage and clean storage. But anyway, you can take a look at it. It's got like very genuine dark Shang taste, but it's got a little bit of kind of sour pinch when you drink it, and that's really coming from the storage. So this is after 20 years of dry storage. Maybe in another 20, the slight pinch will be even less, but if you can, avoid wet storage. So I promise I will show you how this looks like a bit better. Let me just do that. I probably should have brewed this even a bit longer now, because I brewed it quite long, but just want to give you an idea of the kind of color you get here. And also, so this is it. Doesn't look very different from show, but even, I really don't know how to show you, but even looking from here, I can see it's got a ring on the, it's got a ring even in the picture. This idea of the ring is something you find in all kind of old tea. Even old show will start to have a ring. But anyway, the more of this ring effect you get, the more it's generally old as opposed to artificially fermented. So where was I? I showed you my cakes. I told you about Hong Yin. And then after Hong Yin, we get into the most important and interesting cakes are like the number recipes from Menghai. So 7542, 8582, 7432. I've had quite a few amount of this, in particular 80s Menghai, again, quite similar to what I just said about Huang Yin. So dark taste, very satisfying, thick, because Menghai material does that quite well. It does a very good texture once it ages. But then it lasts maybe like 4 or 5 steeps, and then it's kind of gone. In comparison, this red mark, the 50s red mark, Hong Yin I was talking about, and even this to an extent, they go on and on and on and on. Again, all tree material, and the more pure it is, the more steeps it will have. Something else interesting I have here is an 88 Chimbing for Menghai Factory 7542, store dry. So this is the wrapper, kind of destroyed, but wrapper and cake. So yes, this is quite interesting tea. Like if you compare it to factory teas of the 2000, yeah, it is quite interesting. Because it's stored quite dry, one of the first teas that was stored quite dry, it's got quite a lot of complexity. And then the more natural is stored, so I tried a lot of versions. This one actually has been kept in the US for a long time, but I tried versions that have been in Hong Kong first. I tried versions that were like pure dry, which are really still quite undrinkable, like really quite rough, astringent, and like makes your mouth quite dry. Two ones that are a little bit more natural stored. So the best ones are kind of similar to the 80s Menghai cake I was talking about before that have been in Hong Kong first. Dark, rich, thick, quite sweet, but lasts quite a short time. In comparison, this is like the mouth is so comfortable and like salivating and moisturized. Not salivating in a sense of huigan, not salivating in a sense of, oh, before it was astringent and now the relief on not having that astringency, but like it's completely salivating from the beginning. Yeah, flows down really smoothly. No pesticide around this age. It's something, the more I drink tea, particularly the last 5 years, the more I'm not really so interested by, oh, like this is the super sweetest thing or this is the most aftertaste deep thing. Yeah, those are interesting, but also that together with a sense of perfection, together with a sense of the throat feels fully comfortable, the mouth feels completely salivating, there's no dryness whatsoever. It's actually quite rare for a lot of teas to achieve, even very good and old teas. So the 88 Chimbing became quite famous because from the 80s and the 90s, a lot of tea, 70s, 80s and 90s, a lot of teas had been stored in Hong Kong and everything was really, even if it was not a show pu'er, it was kind of a show pu'er spirit. It had been like stored quite wet and it was like made to be really dark. Essentially, to cover the roughness of the material. So because the material was always plantation, from the 50s to 90s, we get these dark ages of just plantation. So you really need really, wet, if not wet, natural, advanced stored to not feel this really uncomfortable in your mouth. As it turns out, actually, even though when something is quite dark and rich, it still is quite astringent and uncomfortable. It's just that the darkness and the thickness is covering it up. But then, at some point in the late 90s, in the mid 90s actually, a group of Taiwanese was like, oh, how comes that the tea from the antique era just feels so much better than the modern tea? And so they went to Yiwu, and two key people in these expeditions were Lu Lizhen, which was the first person who's credited with having made ZhenChunYaHao, the first old tree, ancient tree pu'er cake since the 50s, and Chen Huaiyan, who then founded ZhenChunYaHao and made, was probably the person that spread this idea of ancient tree pu'er the most. So the two of them were like two of the key people, but there were a lot more. The mid and late 90s is where things get really interesting, and why we're here, why we're drinking ancient tree pu'er as we do. So the first cake, the first landmark important cake, is the 96 ZhenChunYaHao. There are prototype versions of 94 and 95 ZhenChunYaHao, but the first one that was quite big was this one, the 96. And this tea is, it really took the world of pu'er by storm. it still is taking the Puerh world by storm, actually, because it still is the value is getting higher and higher, and people are recognizing more and more that ancient tree material is just so much better than plantation, not only for new tea, but also for once tea ages. I remember when I drank it the first time, I had just drunk the very good 50s Hongyin, and I drank quite a lot of other teas, the other teas I told you before, all the plantation and almost plantation, and a little bit better than plantation stuff from 50s to 90s. And then we drank this 96 ZhenChunYaHao. In fact, first we drank the 2001 and 2002 Yiwu, which I talked about a year ago. And then the 96. And like you can see, this cake have a very clear progression trend, which the plantation cake in the middle just don't have. Particularly talking about really deep aftertaste, particularly thinking about like the purity of how the mouth feels. And like the 96 I tried, it's got this lovely gum, but kind of even a little bit on the bitter side. I know it sounds strange since bitter is lovely in an old Puerh, but that's really what it was. Like the color was about reddish, on the light side of red. Of course, these new teas, now that we have very good material, we don't store them wet, or we don't store them natural, we store them much more on the drier side. And yeah, you can see the progression, like the aftertaste, how comfortable it is, how good you feel in the body, and how long they last. So we're talking like, still 12 steepings or more compared to maybe 4, 5 to 6 at most good ones for plantation tea. So the progression is really clear. And actually, the level of material of 96 ZhenChunYaHao is better than 50 Hongyin. And then when we get to the next few years, the 99, 01, 02, Yiwu, Pure Gushu, that's a tiny bit better than the ZhenChunYaHao as well, still. Now the price of ZhenChunYaHao, because it's the very first important cake, has gone quite high as well. I think we are about 10 to 15K. But the price of other cakes of very, very similar quality, in fact, slightly better quality and just a few years older, are still quite reasonable. I think we're about 1,000 USD or pounds, depending what the cake is. Well, depending, actually, the market prices are more like between 2, but I got some at about 1. And that's a very good deal. Now, of course, in modern days, in the last 10 years, we make even better quality tea. However, these teas are already 25 years old, so that's pretty good. So the 2001 and 2002 Yiwu were definitely those kind of trees. And here I have a couple of cakes that are even a little bit better. So 2 cakes. The first one is a 2001 Manzhuan, ZhenChunYaHao Manzhuan, made by ZhenChunYaHao. Gonna show you how that looks. Normally it's naked in a tonga. This is wrapped because we wrapped it. Gonna show you how a full cake looks. Here you go. It's a beauty. It's very, very similar to how the 96 ZhenChunYaHao looks, by the way. Again, I do not have that cake with me. I have tried it, I have samples, but I don't have that cake here. Very expensive for the value. Here I have 4 grams, I pre-weighted before. And then we got this 97 to 99 Yiwu ZhenChunYaHao. This is much more, the front look a bit the same, but it's a bit more burly. You can see particularly on the back. And so the 99 Yiwu, it's a little bit more on the factory cake processing side, the 97, 99. And the 01 Manzhuan is a little bit more on the, slightly more similar to the 01 and 02 Yiwu, so a little bit more already on the more boutique process side. Oh, let me show you the back of the 01 Manzhuan, in case I didn't. There you go. So yeah, I weighted up 4 grams of each. Let's strengthen them up. Compare them. One of the things we're not gonna see very well in the video is that, how long they last. Because I'm not gonna be able to have many cups of it, but I'll have just, a couple of cups and show you what I think, show you how they brew. But yeah, one of the really charming thing is just how long they last. So, might appear expensive, but actually, once you count the fact that they last twice as long as Menghai cakes of the 90s, which are more expensive than this, not expensive anymore. Okay, this is just let's do a short wash first. You don't really need to wash this because they were very pesticide free and they were also very clean, but I want to do only 1 or 2 cups to show you, so I'm gonna wash them now. I also would use a little bit more than 4 grams if I was having a full session. Wash color, quite similar. So 99, 97, 99 Yiwu on the left, 01 Manzhuan on the right. Good, it's gonna be 1 cup because I'm also out of water. Just wanna wash my cups. Short steep, I could do a much stronger steep. I've seen people brewing these cakes in quite different ways. Some people really go for it and make like it's almost violet, the color. It's kind of like a dark burgundy. And some people, like me for example, make it quite a bit lighter. So the color tends to be a bit more on this orangey. Depends how you like your tea. I've seen people doing it both ways, and when it's strong, it's really, really fun. Like the aftertaste, the taste, the chi really assaults you. But perhaps if you want a more kind of long-term, smooth session, you might do it a bit lighter. So yeah, just so you know, you can do it in both ways. If I had more water, I will show you. But it doesn't, because it's all tree material, it doesn't get harsh, or at least. You can make it twice as strong as you would like a Menghai cake without getting nearly as harsh. Obviously, if you steep it for a minute with 8 grams in a small pot, yes, at some point it will get a bit harsh, like all tea will. So the 97, 99 is a little bit more aged. The color is a little bit darker. But I would say in general, the 2 cakes are quite similar. In terms of quality, they're quite similar. I cannot say one is better than the other. But I would say that the processing feels a bit different. Oh, and by the way, this is Manzhuan, but Manzhuan is so close to Yiwu, and as a matter of fact, a lot of old teas might have been made from other places in the 6 famous tea mountains. So, for instance, some people do say that Hongyin was more Manzhuan material as opposed to Yiwu proper. So yeah, quite similar. Not a very strong material difference. Okay, let's try Manzhuan first. Very comfortable, flows very smoothly. Sweetness on the sides. Aftertaste is pretty strong. Yeah, also almost down here. This feels a little bit more aged, a little bit less on the refined side, but a little bit more on the burly factory style, as I was saying before. Also, aftertaste is quite deep. It's very interesting. I sent samples of this to different people, and some people prefer the Manzhuan, some people prefer the Yiwu. This one, I suppose the aftertaste is a little bit of, it's a little bit more like sour, but in a good way. Like some tea when you, it's got sour at first, but then it turns into sweet. Well, this one is more like bitter and sweet, which is the traditional kind of taste you get from a lot of aged Taiwanese Yiwu, and particularly the one that are with this kind of new processing. Nice texture, nice density. Yeah, very similar to the 01 and 02 Yiwu, possibly a little bit stronger. I think both of these teas are a bit stronger than those, and I think they will age slightly better. And they will age in different ways. I think this one is going to be something quite close to what Hongyin would have been, because that was the same kind of processing, while this is something quite new. So the very aged boutique style processing tea is something that we didn't used to have before, and arguably more exciting. Let me try one more sip of this. Yeah, it's very interesting. This feels like a more modern gushu cake. This reminds me a little bit more of more factory older cake. That's essentially the difference between them. Otherwise, the material and even the level of aging, pretty similar. Obviously, this one is between 4 and 2 years older, but otherwise, pretty similar. If I compare these two with the 88 Bing, it's very clear to me that this is way better and what I would like to prefer, what I would like to drink. In fact, 98 Bing was in one of my shelves. Didn't even remember where it was. I had to go and find it. And in general, also because these teas have been stored in something between dry and natural but clean way, in a way that was not accidental like in the past. So this already tastes better than 10 years older tea. So ancient tree pu'er will taste like an old tea much earlier than factory tea will. So in 20 years or so, we're looking at something that will be better than Hongyin. I mean, obviously, than Hongyin today. Obviously, Hongyin keeps on aging, so there is that. But certainly, even in 10 years' time, something that's way better than almost everything else made between the 50s and the 90s. Now, to me, this is extremely exciting. So actually, these teas are the ones that I have the largest amount of to store for a long time, because I really, really believe this is, the one of the best opportunities in Pu'er right now. The other very good opportunity is, single tree from elite area, like the benchmark quality tea. This is something that the market still has not recognized the price of as well. But this is also near there. So I have a lot of these teas to age, and thankfully I am young enough. I'm not 70 yet, and this kind of tea will age really well. I can see the progression. I really, really strongly believe and can see how this is getting to the level of Hongyin and quite a bit early. And not just to that level, but to something better, because I think we never had tea of even this quality before, let alone tea of the quality we make today in 2025. So this is really exciting for Pu'er, actually. I think, in 10, 20 years' time, we will be like, oh God, I could have bought those teas and I didn't. And I think we're really, really exciting part of Pu'er history, because still not that many people, I mean, obviously the prices of this tea are not low, but compared to the kind of other things you could buy that give a similar level of quality today in Pu'er, and with this aging potential, it's really, really good. So I have quite a lot of this. I suggest you do too. And I hope the little history tasting / brain dump was helpful, or at least entertaining.